Good morning. We start with Lama Tsongkhapa Guru Yoga. From the heart of the Savior of 100 deities of Tushita, on a peak of cloud resembling a clam of extremely white fresh curd, King of Dhamma, omniscient Losandrapa, please come here together with your sons. In the sky before me, on a lion throne, lotus and moon, my perfect pure Guru smiles with delight. Supreme field of merit for my mind of faith, please abide for 100 yawns to spread the teachings. Your holy mind has the intelligence that understands the full extent of objects to be known. Your holy speech with its excellent explanations is an ear ornament for those of good fortune. Your holy body is radiantly beautiful with glory renowned. To you who are meaningful to see, hear, and remember, I prostrate. Pleasing drinking water, various flowers, fragrant incenses, lice, scented waters, and so forth. Oceans of cloud-like offerings, both actually arranged and mentally emanated. I offer to you the supreme field of merit. Whatever non-virtue of body, speech, and mind, especially those opposite to the three vows that I have collected from beginningless time, I confess each and every one with fervent regret from my heart. You strove for much learning and practice in this degenerate age, and made your freedoms and richnesses meaningful by abandoning the eight worldly concerns. Savior, we sincerely rejoice in your extensive deeds. Perfect, pure, holy Gurus, from the billowing clouds of wisdom and compassion in the sky of Dharmakaya, please let fall a rain of profound and extensive Dharma upon the receptacle of those to be subdued, exactly as they need. May whatever virtue I have collected benefit the teachings and all transmigratory beings, and in particular may it cause the essence of perfect pure Losandrapa's teachings to shine forever. Sajipaki Chushing Metok Dramri Rablishi Nidegyempadi Sangye Shindu Mikte Uwa Idrokunamdak Shila Chupashu. By the merits of having offered this mandala to Lama Tsongkhapa and his two sons, may I, my family members, and all sentient beings be able to meet, practice, and actualize the teachings of the victorious one Losandrapa, who had the morality of eminently pure way of life, was courageous in the extensive conduct of the sons of the victorious ones, and accomplished the yoga of two stages of supreme bliss and emptiness. Idam Guru Ratna Mandalakam Niryatayami. By the force of having fervently requested in this way, hollow beams of white light are emitted from the hearts of the perfect pure Father and Sons, and combining into one, enter my crown. White nectar, the color of milk, flows from the opening of tube of white light, cleansing all my sicknesses, spirit harms, negative karmas, obscurations, and their imprints without exception. My body becomes as pure and clear as crystal. We recite 5-line Miktsema 3 times. Migme tsewe ten chen chen rezik, drime gempe wampo jampe liang, dupo malu jonze sawedak, kanchen gebe tsungen tsongkapa, losandra pe shabla sowade. Migme tsewe ten chen chen rezi, drime gempe wampo jampe yang, tupo malu jonze sawe dak, kanchen gepe tsungen song kapa, lo sandrape shabla soade. Migme tsewe ten chen chen rezi, drime gempe wampo jampe yang, tupo malu jonze sawe dak, Kanchen kepe tsungen tsongkapa, lo sandra pe shabla soade. And a prayer for the swift return of Lama Zopa Rinpoche by His Holiness the Dalai Lama. Peerless teacher and assembly of the children of the victorious ones, Shravakas and Pratyeka Buddhas, victorious Losang father and sons, along with the lineage masters, all the objects of refuge of infinite lands, please bestow the virtue and goodness of accomplishing this prayer here and now, holding and spreading the Muni's precious and complete teachings through explanation and practice. You wore the armor of patience that is never discouraged. Incomparable, venerable Guru, to you I make request. While striving single-pointedly for the sake of the victorious one's teachings, the sole gateway through which all benefit and happiness emerge, and for mother living beings, you suddenly departed to peace. What a great loss! Nevertheless, through the undeceiving truth of the blessings of the ocean of the three jewels and the great waves of bodhicitta of the children of the victorious ones, may the smile of a reincarnation swiftly beam in a glory for fortunate disciples.
Sangi chodon soji chonlum la chanchu pardu dami japsun she dagi chushi ye banda dagi drolam benshi sangi drubar sho Sangi chodon soji chonlum la chanchu pardu dami japsun she dagi chushi ye banda dagi drolam benshi sangi drubar sho Sanji chodang soji chonum la chanchu pardu dami kyabsunchi dagi chushi geban da dagi dralam bench sanjin drupar shu kangi tuzini zone tawa tamji bambi shere tambi chun tenze kodam dela chanze lo Namo la ye kenan lo dan je ke trubon da mi kenan dan ro kunji danum chizum tamje ke du da ge chu den do. Good morning everyone.
Çok da gene.
Chom den de zamblin la pepche tene che dan ra nam sanji bi che thomang song di de shishak sa do jara shishak sa do chitam mamu yung dos ne zu di ane lusem ning nangi semla teni ra ane che sung dos ra
Buddha Shakyamuni, he came into our world and brought the teachings of the Dharma, brought the Buddhism into the world. And he gave a wide variety of teachings. And the teachings were primarily about, or almost exclusively about, dealing with one's mind. Not so much about physical behavior or verbal communication, but primarily about dealing with one's mind.
Teni denalo la ya pe shaundi ro pe shaundi ani sanji chom den de ta 가서 당한주 루셈니 여반자 직 아니 루게 동가세야 직다 셈그 동가세야 탑시지 간지 셈그 동가세스 라운디 아니 인지민지기 셈라야 직 동가 잡고 된지 요거야 말레스 셈라야 대와 여바티 공벌든 로야티야 공벌다야티야 동가세비 탑시 되네 되네라고요레스 배낭아주 류게 아니 동가세야라야 루종치온디 인지미 류 마디바딘지 고마라스 류 데부 여바야나야 안 델라 종들치온디 류티 아니 갈수다 루야르야 디난신기 아니 셈기 동가세비 탑시티 가주 스탠바이나야 당한 두스 좀 된디기 추디 셈기 동가세비 탑시리스 라운디 까고라야 셈나라 가르초르시기레스 나 셈나 동가스 케메디나 아니 이 추년고에 문도아 삼삼기 딘디도 서바나 아니 미세기 갑두 동가 잡었던디 요고 문도아스라 아니 동가 잡어 매바이나 아니 수수 셈 야기 땅에 아니 땡 아니 땅셈 shum발라 소바다 아니 직 셈라야 강가 친구 여바나 아니 쉬우지기 벤도여 대바직 아니 산지
Gonna. Die Dataktis Körper Gyosong. Gaba Badu Gosonge. Sem Shumpa, Yamana Dugal Shuk Jempo Yodu. Den Inguma Sem Anangcha Jang Yede. Bendo Be Jempo Yode. De Badu Gosong. Den die Datak Körper Gyosong.
셈레야 동가 메나 셈 수수 셈 야긴로야 탑시티에 용도스 걔디 동가 타고 여바나 야자기야 담바더니 최되게 펜도 용도스라
Gosong. Both our body and our mind can experience suffering, physical suffering and mental suffering. And with both of our body and mind, through training, we can reduce and overcome experiences of suffering. So for example, if one engages in physical exercise and one is quite unfit, one's body is not well trained, very quickly the body experiences suffering. But by continuing to train, one's body becomes stronger, more flexible, and then one can engage in much more than one previously could without experiencing much difficulty. So we know this is how we can train our body. So too with our mind. So our mind, of course, is where we can and do experience a lot of anguish, a lot of suffering. But through training our mind, skillfully developing our mind, we can greatly reduce the amount of suffering we experience. So here there's some important points to make, in that when one's life is okay, one's not experiencing any intense mental suffering, people may well have the thought, I don't need to hear teachings on the Dharma or Buddha's teachings. My mind's okay. Life is okay for me. But the reality is, at that period of time, you may not be experiencing intense suffering, but that such experiences will still befall you. So what one needs to do is, when one's life is okay and one's not experiencing too much anguish, that really is the time to focus on hearing teachings and cultivating, developing them within oneself. Because one's mind at that time is not overwhelmed by problems and difficulties. Therefore, one has mental space to hear teachings and reflect on their meaning, developing them within. Then later, when one does experience problems, that prior training, then one can rely on it. Because if one's mind becomes depressed or one is overwhelmed by a feeling of hopelessness, that is not an ideal time to train one's mind. Rather, when life is okay, when the suffering is not intense, one's problems and difficulties are not intense, that is the time when one has the mental capacity to hear teachings and reflect well on them. That is the time to train one's mind. That's okay now.
Terediza chik pigi ngulaya samlo kedando di kandaji gogre slaundi ani chomden de penata chik member tawch ra member chik nganzo lu ji madini ani menkan lan drondi pigi member ke ji ma na kharang lu na sa yon sobati ani laptop ma se na sa din jong sa ge ani tsawa nichin kharang dindi chik ro kenzan dindi chik thone ani lu ma de wan di yung dos 이제 캐나다야 맨 딘디지 고그레스 랍네 이게 때온디 답이 맨셔바티게 아니 멘테다 아니 멘테 갑게라 소바 치그러서로 디나신게 다지 당한주 쇼키 기부였나 아니 닝군 기부 메데와 닝군 직 대우르잖아 공다 대우 메데죠 샘 축대지 용도 와서라 다디 아니 샘기 나차 당문 겨와도지 디레스 다디 자와 카르스 라운디 차단 유무승이들이스 아니 송여레스라 딘자다 디 아니 샘기 나차세기 탑시디 좀 된디기 치우 나라야다 아니 더 신지 말아봐. 더 세부 세경 진지당 아니 송샤주 딘디지레도 와서라.
At the outset, when we start to engage in Buddhism, it's good to develop a particular perception of one's situation. So there's a particular analogy that's used. If you're sitting here now, or you're sitting at home, and you feel there's something not quite right with my body. I'm a little off today. And then you think, actually, yesterday and the day before, maybe for several days, something's off, not quite right. What will one do? One will go and see a doctor. And if one has a choice, one will seek out a skilled physician and go and to receive advice, because one knows something's a little wrong. So here one starts out by recognizing oneself as being a patient in that there is some illness. One then seeks out a skilled medical practitioner and asks them, seeks out a skilled medical practitioner who then in turn will examine your situation, ask many questions, maybe poke and prod, and they'll get a good idea of what's wrong. And then they will prescribe a course of medical treatment, maybe quite varied, some medication, some exercise, changes to one's diet, maybe a wide range of things. And then you, relying on this skilled medical practitioner and having already recognized that something's not quite right, you then go and follow well the advice that's been given. And you bring about the certain lifestyle changes, take whatever medication was prescribed, and so forth. So this is the approach to take with our current situation. And the good time to do this is in the morning, before that busyness of the day starts, and the mind is a little calmer and settled, to look within, to come to recognize one's own mind. And there we come to recognize that our mind is afflicted. Our mind is very often dominated, influenced, guided by, directed by afflictions. In other words, consciousnesses such as attachment, desire, anger, jealousy, pride, these all too often influence, dominate, direct our way of thinking and therefore our behavior. And all of these, amongst what they have in common is they are mistaken. They misapprehend reality. So this is a skillful way that right from the outset of our training, we come to recognize ourselves as being a patient, that there is, in terms of our mind, there are afflictions. Our mind is afflicted by particular mistaken consciousnesses. These need to be eradicated. That's okay.
Teta dinza penanganzu lugi nasa yongyage zo uchigdi ani lugi layata rada jongshi segorda jongshi lugi jongshi tugondi ra lugi pena ani tre chamanya mata tachi lula tembi tsawada chamu chaji yorada di chamanyamdi ani lugi jong tuing gores pena lugi nibi Chunyon Drella Sobota, and Lula Yogi, Trade and Shucher Drella Sobota. Or do Siondi, any tag Gutan Chamanya Soba, Kanji, Lugun Jonshi Truondi, any Lugun Nasat Legoras. Didn't love your Gumbuludugi, Gumbuludugi, and Pena Semcam Gi Nasat Samayimba, Lugun Nasetolia. Kumbuludu shoki barendo. Men shompe mamudo. And men kandrach sogu yame. Men Jordan ni ichene. Kumbuludu shosonda. So insares ra. O dindijin da kanji Lugun Jongshi Chamanyawal teni Lugun John Truondi Lu Nasale gores. And Dinanshingi Sem di Chamanyawal teni. And Sem Truwal teni Sem Makiwa Yungores. Ra Sem Makiwati. Sem trouble then. That same truya the charisma, same truya the chi maimba, nang pig, and it's chadan numula soba shukchi ondi. Then he sem come to two gores. Then he might give a chai gores. Ra.
Then total up and also super kyopo yin do not so sem. Also super kyopo ki wangtu jeni, also sem yang kyopo joki des, ni among la sopa kegia des. Teni kompelutup di dan dropo di jungwashi di gosong. Di
gosong. Teni lu nasa legores.
Di gosong.
Lu John trubal teni lu nasa legu yoba nanshengi sem ki sem kam trubal teni sem madebal legores.
Teni gosong. A great Indian master from ancient India, he identified very clearly in terms of our body that when the basic elements from which it is composed are out of harmony, out of sync, then we experience illness. And so we could say that perhaps sometimes one experiences a fever, or maybe on the opposite end, one is unusually cold. And there we can see that our elements are out of, the elements are comprised of, that our body is comprised of. These are out of harmony, and therefore we experience illness. So in the same way, when our mind is out of harmony, the afflictions are dominating. And with afflictions, or the consciousnesses such as attachment, anger, jealousy, and pride, when they afflict us, then our way of thinking, our mind, is out of harmony, out of balance. That's okay.
These daji manzu chakdan nyumung de lamsang ngwe sin tuya kakbure la ani lamsang kak tuya de kakbure dos ra kakbu yores imbayna yan daji thoma ani tabshi do ti ra ta zo nganzu samgang to la siang tabshi do ti subul ro chi shagoya ti samdang ka la pe kichimu sares ra gomgyang zu taro 사막 디시에 거다 수불 직샤시네 근데 욱트 슉침부 가시 식단으로 욱트 슬란 욱 가시 식단만 야지야다 뭐 수부디 나우스야래 펜도용 가서레스 samlogic 아니 단지 sam로베 아니 가서다 띵암라다 콩토다 직샤당다 차도 슉침부잖아 and details on long uktan korang tolaya samlashan uk shukchenbu kashi tangbayna lele rochi dende chagwares disungda di ro
Especially initially, it's difficult to recognize when our mind is afflicted. It can be difficult to spot, in particular, attachment, but even the subtler levels of anger. But with all the afflictions, it can be difficult to recognize them. And what is certainly the case is it's difficult to abandon them. But there is ways to deal with this, ways to become skilled. So initially, one needs to calm one's body, calm one's mind. And a widely known technique is to sit quietly and take a few strong breaths, strong exhalations. And this will serve to calm the mind, bring it if it's greatly distracted, especially by afflictions, it will calm the mind, calm the body. Lasso.
다 단도지 저거 ukang de 유로잖아 우리시 체 탁치 가시 탄거 같아
Von der Dekommation also Ujung, Dene?
그런데 되게 고마서 단도 저거 강데 유로죠 봐나 아니 우리 체 탁치 가시 탄거
Na zu Doko Gyagin du, Ujung na, Dene konnte die sich Sapo dokumentieren.
당이 저 뒤하고 참아서
Dene sind aber gemacht.
우리 단순 하고매
Jodetang Hakamacho.
하고 마서 우리 단순 하고매나 가르나 욱 내니 찍다도 오늘 욱 단서져라
Uktang Hakacho.
욱 단에 찍지 욱 칸에 찍다에다 오늘 욱 단서 찍어라 샴니
Dene Gosan. So Geshe is just making very clear that when we talking about breathing out forcefully, he's talking from our mouth, from our upper exits. He's not talking about as if one is overeaten and perhaps one is full of gas and then one is expelling wind in that way. That is not what he's meaning.
Lora long di shuk long kasakane tensa long di anyon drogara tendel roji tendel chagwasares mission wo kodrosare samsam roji pette shuk chesi tanto anara lele chagares lele chaga ya chagwares
But whilst of course I'm joking, there is truth in this, and we know from our own experience that through whichever orifice one exhales wind from with vigor, one's body is a little more at ease, relaxed thereafter.
겨울음지 송도아 겨울음지 남주는 백이라 남주나는 곰자기였어 안 저거 버와 파직도 수직다 고사 말서 나니 너 진직 단계였어
His Holiness has often told the story of when he's on an airplane and he's wanting to meditate, but his belly is a little full, so he's a little full of gas. He then looks to his left, he looks to his right to see if now's a good time, and then he leans over and and makes his body a little bit calmer, a little bit more relaxed.
근데 알든지고 살았어. 어떡한지 옥숙 전부 가시 땅지 아니 되니 아직 원부 고가서야지 배 개침을 넣어서 먼저지 샘레야 착바께서기 율다 만들어야 미기 때바이나 아니 작당글로 게임 거래서 작빌로 게임 거래서 대난신기 암족은 자문도 냠바이나로 삭든도 지게자자 문도 냠바이나 아니 델야 딱제 마치오지 아니 깨지 디 제스 로체 아니 수수그 샘 축드야 된지 배 용구여로스
Then go sang jia chung chung chikia. Now so uk sukchempo tangdu, then ka yamene naku nere.
La.
Now so uk sukchempo tangdu, ganere ka yamene naku.
Kan
Kane,
nakune.
nakune, chuche.
Yeah.
When we do settle our body and we breathe strongly from our nose, then this is important to do. Do a few breaths like that with strong nasal exhalation. Then the second point that's important is one needs to subdue one's senses. One needs to limit the distractions that may in our mind that will arise due to information coming into our senses. So primarily one thinks about sight, so not having things that disturb one's vision, leading to a lot of thoughts arising. And also very important is sound, in particular speech that one understands. This too will be very distracting for the mind. So what it's important then to reduce distraction that will arise through our senses. That's all.
Rather, mimambu chik kechada mandanye chene. And delaya takje machoche. Tagaran dembasumche. And so kibu meba. Sogorasra. Yorvasra.
And speech really can disturb, speech that we hear really can disturb the mind a lot, because it's quite common that when you hear something unpleasant, that one doesn't think too deeply about what has been said, but prior to any thought about what's been said, you accept these negative words and your mind becomes unhappy. So this is quite common.
Taji ani tindam da rodam tindi tolya pigi sem madevachi lagdun chik devi nature chongsa ke jora tso chik semla ya matamba che kanji uktaya khorang tolya semsha chi ani maung ba chik susu ta chik ani den duya ki chik rewa chimbu gyabde ya da chik yora da o dindi la ya ani samlama ta chi tanya korang tolaya ani sem shan chik detu ba na ani kanzam jelaya chik ani tonghang ro chik ra chik tongsang chik ra tongsang chik ani yungu yasares ra odu des chik rotu ba na ani chik sem korang tolaya sem Sashan Rigbegi Semse, Sem Korang Tolaya, and Sem Shayach. Diungusaris, the dig and it's negab Susu Chigorata, Makivata, Chigorata, Amrata, Tuzulaya, Tuzu Sayalaya, Pentope Yahwehungusaris.
This practice when one makes several strong exhalations through one's nostrils, one contains one's senses, so as not to stimulate the mind. So one controls what one sees, particularly what one hears, also smells and tastes. And then one just focuses on the breath. And here, what's key is your mind will be drawn away. It'll be drawn quite possibly to events from the past or events still to come. Things that one's plans for later in the day or week or hopes for the future. Whatever the thoughts arise about the past or the future, just bring one's mind back to the breath and relax on your breath. And by doing this, your mind will calm and become relaxed and spacious. Then after gaining skill in this, all that will appear is just your mind itself. One will be able to then just relax into the mind. And to be able to calm the body and the mind in this way really brings great benefits. That's okay.
아니 소소 샘 like 샘 돌아야 샘 샤네 로 간지 비게 다 숑는다 사실이 봤을라요다 간지 동성로 될야 샘지 샤토 바나 데니 디 나네 아니 소소 줄아야 지 대차 기야다 컨트롤 기야다 샤당기 로 용이 지 레기요 바티 아니 소르요사레스 로 딘디기치 안 하고고요사레스다 소르스나 하고고요 로다 디야 데치 종다르 체고르마다 람상 싱마르와스라 데데 자만 안 람상 비기게 아니 싱마디네 종다르 체바나 간섬 질야 오니지 데차 길로다 샤당 길로다 차도 로코라 용구요 바지 문진치 두고사레스 랑안준 되차당 컨트롤당 차도로서 기온디 기사가 유코랑 바견다 대마도 기비 로코랑 문진치 두고요 말아왔어 대마도디 아니 샘그 강아세야디 뱀마서 깔라카고 차고레스 치기 깬 간다지 통만 디기 수수 샘래야 강아서야 규차로야 아니 안줄라 녀가 디 용구요라서
When one becomes a little skilled in this meditation, and the mind is able to settle, to rest, and one is really, at that time then, one becomes very aware of the mind itself. Then, when afflictions arise, when the mind is drawn to attachment or in the direction of anger or pride, immediately one will recognize this. This too comes through training. One comes to recognize as an affliction starts to arise. And this is of great benefit. This is of great benefit because when an affliction is starting to rise, maybe it's like a Western way of saying, could express it like this: when the color of the mind starts to change hue, one will immediately recognize it. Because the situation we find ourselves in right now is quite different from that. Our mind tends to be very distracted all over the show, going to this thought and that thought. Then it's in this state, it's very difficult to even recognize the afflictions, let alone their arisal. And therefore, because our mind is uncontrolled at the moment, suffering so easily arises because the afflictions readily arise, dominate, and direct us. Therefore, suffering so easily arises. But through training like this, becoming skilled in the way that was mentioned, one can start to recognize the afflictions firstly when they have arisen, but later, as they are arising, one will come to recognize them. That's all.
아니 샘 고트고야다 학돈도 아니 지 샘 나사선단다 아니 작당 유무생인디 고트고야 배 계심으로 당한주 지 벤스타 샤당도 들어 샤당 기온디 오니기 마기바 오니기 마기바 샘배 아니 가서다 닝기 싸워 거라네 먼저래 나사당디야디 로 람상 먼저 아니 힝 짜니 거라네 nothing thing 차용하지 이것도 아서라 대표기 아니 콘트롤께서 율표기디 수수닝은 안 주고 말았어
Die Tama, die zugezog der Kola?
콘트롤께서 율죠라 율디 수수닝 나눠라 주용고 말았어 이는 콘트롤께인데 람상 닝 거라 나니 나자다야지 이것도 아서 여 사실 열어라
In this meditation, in this meditation, what I'm describing and what is so important is this process by which we come to know our own mind. This is so important. Coming to know our own mind, coming to know ourselves, because through this process, we'll come to recognize the actual role the afflictions play in our own unhappiness. We'll come to see how attachment in its many guises causes suffering, how anger, even at the subtler levels of frustration and annoyance, causes suffering and pain. So to take then anger as an example, anger often arises in dependence to something outside of us, whether it's a situation going on or an individual. Our anger arises in dependence on our interaction with something outside of us. But where do we experience that anger? It's here. We experience it here. The very root of our suffering that we experience is within our own mind. So by coming to know our own mind, taking responsibility for our own mind, becoming skilled in our own mind, this clearly has great, great benefit. That's okay.
Je bena kongru kisa yuldi ani mig tongo mundo asra. Manzole kongru kiye yora. Mig tongo yo mare ani kogo yo mare ani ji rek lagbig tugu yo mare kongru kiye yon. Kongru kiye yon. Da di sem korang sogdo mazo. Ani 파쇼마게 소기야바디 소금야바디 samtana siwin sares ra sem korang samlo tandang chitoni control loke and dig control loke and semlaya nasa soyachi this so sem na yobanza sem koran nani sem nani pe and nin koran nasa tanji yungudo asra to samtanda ani nganzulaya ngos nungindi sem chungindi sem korang toni yunguyoba chagdan yumu korang toni yunguyoba ratrech ro hakwayaji ngosares
Kadang ning natsa dan drabo sung ning natsa
ning nan la tanganzu pebisha dan
de kasi ken danta sukpoki kola kesu segi mare de dene kosong kasi ning kegyu jetang loka yore.
Yeah.
When one gains skill in this process, one will come to recognize how all too often afflictions such as anger arise in dependence on our external world, what people say, what they do, and so forth. Things that we see. Attachment can arise, anger arises, and so forth. But as we get more skilled, we'll recognize the very heart of our problem is not outside of us. It comes from within. It's how we respond to external events. But moreover, one will come to recognize that one actually, all too often, doesn't require any change in the external event for an affliction, for example, anger to arise. One can get angry about something one's thinking. Nothing's changed outside. Just through thinking in an unskillful manner, afflictions, attachment, anger, and so forth can arise. But here we come to really come to recognize for ourselves the heart of our problem lies within us, not external to us. This is where the root of our problems arise. That's what can.
Big controversies yuldi tondi kaukala gavlo jigre kaukala magavlo jigdos yul chigi chigran bayna ra yul khoran lan jo khaim me bayna ti tondi kaukala
Oh, con the data kyopogeso.
Gawada kaukala magav jigdos
Again, data kakson. Yeah, data kakson. Chachang yang kyasong loknam because the mahang chaya gomason. Ne data kyamane keran so data kakumejo. Yene ne keran so zugutsugiya.
I think that's Piggy Casa, the Yulchig Ryan by Nayans, Yulchig Ra, and a Michi, Nado Jing by Naya, Chans of Kaukalanganton di Gauloki cigarettes, Kaukalanganton di Condrosa cigarettes, in a Naranres, your kind royal mares. In a Semnan the English, Dick Hutchins, Sam rank server a mato. Piggy Yulding you do Tony, and it's Chargo Mares. yu korang when di ani 주요 말이스.
Awesome. And as one continues to see this process unfold and recognize where the cause of our suffering abides, that it abides within, we'll come to understand how the world unfolds for us individually. And we'll come to actually recognize that if things are going in accordance with our wishes, we have a particular response. If they are not going in accordance with our wishes, we have a different response. And this shows that the external event, a person, what they're saying, what they're doing, or a situation, that is actually not how we experience that is dependent on our way of thinking. So for example, we take one object, myself. You're seeing me. Every time you come here, you see me, you look at me. So I'm still pretty much the same. But some days you'll have a feeling of liking towards me. Other days, perhaps a feeling of disliking. I'm not doing anything different. So what's changed? Perhaps your mood on some days is more open and pleasant, and therefore a feeling of liking arises. On other days, one may come here and one's mood is quite dark. Then one has a very different experience of the same thing. So in this way, by watching our mind, coming to know ourselves, we see how the world unfolds before us, largely dependent on our own way of thinking. That's all.
There's a kadduinaya, the kadduinaya, susu sem laya tagoyati, susu sem la tagoyati, and Geshe Tsultrim. Susu sem dia tagji, susu sem dipena, and Ganzu machine ge Karso Taji and Rawanda machine gipilaya, and Tanzin Chiadi, Ra Kalkavroda. 용마로 이내 소수 샘디 소수 땅진 지역이 탑시지 용거여레스 디 텐투바나 탑시 디 땅원에 텐투바나 다 디니 손에 야자 야탐바 미제 간살이야 샘벌을 치는 루트겠지 디 용거여서레스라
What is of great importance, and hopefully through this presentation thus far, you will come to recognize that watching our mind, observing our mind, is of great importance. And it's not only important when you're sitting quietly, it's important at all times and all situations to take care of your mind, to take responsibility for your own mind. This is essential, and it becomes ever easier to do as one goes through these preceding steps I mentioned, when you recognize that how we experience the world is through the lens of our own mind. And by changing our mind, we change how we experience the world. And what is a further truth is it's very difficult from what any of us say or do to get others to change their mind, to get others, for example, to reduce their grasping at reality, their mistaken grasping at reality. But our own mind, we can take care of that. We can take responsibility for that. We can reduce our true grasping, our grasping at a reality that is mistaken. This we can do. And as we take ever more responsibility for our mind and therefore gain ever more skill over our own mind, what will happen for each and every single person? So your mind will become more relaxed, become calmer, and more spacious. This will definitely happen for anyone who applies themselves, who trains themselves in this way. That's all.
The mishingi namgyur laya teni ani soso gi semdi magibaroch södebayna tenda magibadi zoya mebachi zoyaje kasna namgyur dramadan thoyadi nonju tsawani ka tuwe koreyo marasra ka tuwe koreyo mar an jawramji disonda Shengi namgyula teni susu semgi digi lagma chugus. Tanda derda nyamne di chesho sevada. Shengi namgyu karinan tongore jara. Yabu tongore, dukja tongore, karin tongore. Inaya susu shenla teondi shengi yuanden kang yoba di tola ya samlojik tangtuwa na. Sem nanglo la ya. Ani chagdang di nyong rinjogo yoba. Ani zebi chambada zewa sengjara. Di yungu yosares. Shengi yuanden sangbayna. Shenla gawi lochik. Shenla zewi lochik yungu yores. Ta dinza shenla tawi tse yuanden tongna ta. Sosu semla takji chiwi tse. Ani kyung chogna takji chibayna. Ta dingi dorondi. Tam tartugondi. Ani kepsan cheshu di. Sosu la radayachi.
As long as we remain in the position that we find ourselves whereby the mood of others impacts us, we will never find lasting happiness. As long as we remain in this position where if we meet someone who's in a bad mood and may well express that, as long as we are in the position where we then grasp at that, we will suffer. We will not attain lasting happiness. And His Holiness emphasizes this on many occasions, that we will not achieve lasting happiness if we remain influenced, dependent on the moods of others, or influenced by the moods of others. Rather, the skilled practitioner develops their own inner good qualities, and in dependence on those, they develop lasting happiness. How so? Because as one develops inner good qualities, in the way that I've been describing thus far today, one will reduce the afflictions that so harm our mind. One will reduce the strength and frequency of mind, such as attachment, such as anger. And as we reduce these, we have the ever more mental capacity to develop actual good qualities, such as love and compassion for others. Because as we take control of our mind, and we start not to be so influenced by the moods of others and the expressions of others, we will have a calmer, more relaxed mind, more spacious mind, and then we can focus on developing a loving attitude towards all, a compassionate attitude towards all. So we'll have this greater mental space that's not dominated, that's not afflicted, and thereby we can develop deeper love for others, deeper compassion for others. And we do this through not focusing on the faults of others, but rather focusing on the good qualities that they have. And by doing so, by both reducing our own afflicted minds, as well as focusing on the good qualities of others, then whenever we see them, hear them, or think of them, a feeling of warmth towards them will arise, a feeling of closeness towards them will arise. So in this way, only benefit follows for you. That's what gonna.
That jumped in the same with the tab to what drink young taba drink tab Shinjimala needing it, jumped in the conchagora. The congi song the same mantruyak, same mantruyak, tabshikan sungadazara, same mantruyak. When a kalala then same truyagi, dukshudi, bena, any changrala soba, any piggy, tajik, Jamda Sayor, the Rasadroya, or Didi, Zawa Nini Marches. And Chanzu Na Pilaya, and it Tembalaya, singing Jimbana, Zawa Ninis, Masas, sang Zawa Nini Chanzolia, the Chochin the Jigmans, San and Digri Sajora.
We're gonna di komasongato dugzela sokpa di masa.
Masa Sonra, Masa Sonra. Masa Sonra, the Jumden Digi, any Nalaya, any Temba singing Jimbana. Ni Jinju Chingi Jimbana. Zawa Nin and Chanton Mayons. Nigi and the Chokjin Zaw in the mess, Chanton and Digri Sagi, and the Chokjin Zaw in the mess. The guys in the dig 아니 same true dro요 반자 라 same true dro요자 디렌도 다 same true 나 되니 아니 디기 참아 랑도에지래도 same true dro나 라 아니 경 참아 될 때니 용기여로서 라
Buddha Shakyamuni, he taught the perfect, complete, and unmistaken method to develop lasting happiness, a happiness that always abides, is never punctuated by even a moment of displeasure or problems or difficulties. And this method comes down to abandoning completely all deceptive ways of thinking, mistaken ways of thinking that are not in accordance with reality. So for this reason, Buddha Shakyamuni taught that one should abandon all types of food or drink that bring harm. So this we can understand to either those or to both those types of food that one may have, that may harm one's body, have an allergy towards, but in particular, intoxicants of varying kinds, whether alcohol or drugs or tobacco. The Buddha taught that all of these should be abandoned. And so for myself, I am a student of the Buddha. I'm a follower of the Buddha. Hence, in my entire life, I've never taken any intoxicants. And why is this? Why did the Buddha teach this? Why do I follow the teaching, the advice here of the Buddha? Because by taking something that will negatively impact on one's mind, one is harming one's cultivation of lasting happiness. Because if one takes intoxicants and one's mind becomes intoxicated, it is a mind that is even more deluded. It's a mind even further from reality. And therefore, one will engage in harmful behavior. That's all.
아니 공다드니 소즈 나미냠도 축바잡 아니 콘드사 잘라도스 짝아 안사니쇼기다 아니 라야 타니 세온디 테니베 아니 농중 망부 쇼르데 통 겨바게데 망부 차기여라서라.
And we know that some society it's all too common. Sorry, where one works a hard day at work, perhaps goes home via the bar, has a drink, calm down, relax, but maybe a drink too many, arrives at home and has an argument. And maybe sometimes that's one argument too many and it becomes violent. Things are broken. Particular relationships get broken. Then in the morning, one wakes up, one's body's not feeling very good. One is reminded of what happened the night before, what was said, what was done, and regret arises. So this we know certainly happens, and it happens all too often.
Teresa, 아니 좀 전에 가서 내가 시기요반자, 내가 두수톨이야 까면난 거 도와서, 라, 배나 샘 투야지기 작당 유무다 쪼래서 작당 유무 기약이 규가리 임바티 뒷광고 제약이 배 답시 나요래서 배나 간주 다 아니 작바기야디 이 게임망부 연구도 와서라 배나 작바기야 아니 카셀 때네 작바기야 지 연구요래서 카세디 카세 하장기 망자와나 세 사야드 망자와나 아니 루기 따지 루기 또 슈기온디 아니 루기다 감라 착 아니 착기온디 아니 작바기야지 라 아니 작바기 할 때니 샤단기 아니 축바셔야 작도기할 소용 다디 아니 세디안 세 처리 바세 칼라사야기 세지어스 디페 계신 무송여레스 라 아니 칼라마스나 루디 먼저 가서다 감셀 라테니 루드 소르고연자 사고거레스 이네 사야 망잖아 아니 차바기에 줄어들어간자 쇠리버지 학돈도지 아니지 치료다 로 난술을 레가메 다 칼라사 아니 니데바나 더디 아니 독슈직 쓰기도 하더라 sorry 독슈직 쓰기다
나양 고소.
네. 네.
Being danger for beings that he cared for deeply, Buddha Shakyamuni gave this advice that I've just given. He taught that we need to be very aware of the causes that are likely or potentially will lead to attachment arising or lead to anger arising. And those causes we need to abandon. And we need to abandon them through recognizing the harm that follows. And by harm here, I specifically mean the arisal of attachment, anger, and so forth. To take as a clear illustration, because Buddha did teach on this, is the food and drink that we consume. We need to think about what we consume, what we eat and what we drink. And we need to look at both what we eat and how much we eat, what we drink and how much we drink. This we need to look at. Because if we see we are being guided by our attachment, we are creating further causes for suffering. Because attachment itself leads to suffering. But from attachment, anger too can easily arise, either from intoxicants or when someone gets in your way of your desire being fulfilled. We need to recognize the danger that these afflictions bring and the causes from which they arise. And we need to be responsible. We need to take care. As part of this process, though, too, one needs to be ensure that one doesn't become extreme. This body, this is something of great benefit, of great use, that can be of great benefit. It needs to be sustained. So we need to eat because we need to have energy. And we need to eat nutritiously so that our health can be good. So we need to take a balanced approach. And choosing where that balance is comes about independent, watching our mind, coming to know ourselves. So therefore, the advice from the Buddha is to watch and take care of what and how much one eats and one drinks. That's all.
제 간지 차법 마기에게 탑시 망부슈 송도스라 칼라사당 둘로칸당 직 아니 내칸라 소바 딘디 망부 돈데라 먼저 차법에서 고망부슈 인거라 딘디래야 아니 탑라 망부슈 송요레스 다 딘디 그 탑람 직 땡투바나 아니 셈라야 아니 차번 용야지 차번 용와이나 셰단 용거리 차던 용거리 아니 다지 뉴문 그리디 용드로다스라 뉴무 가주 신용드로바나 아니 셈디 아니 다 셈레스로와세 셈디 가와 샤다 아니 셈 땅진 간르지 제와이나야 제토야지 로 르레스로와세 베나 르종 야부 지온디 아니 가주스 처음거나 가주스 규거나 규토야라 소바 처음거는 처음토야라 소바 르레스로와세 차기도스로 디난신기 아니 셈기 뉴문기 초디 가주스 까바이나 디츠기 아니 셈레스로와세 아니 셈시부 아니 셈기 토네 비기 직 아니 가서다 직 nenga yugu tenda kajusu samtangbayna ani chik tombanila sobaro kajusu samtangbayna pe ani sibu kortoyak dindi yunguyasares.
The Buddha taught so many methods to prevent the arisal of attachment and anger. So we see how it arises in dependence on external things, such as food, such as clothing, such as being in various situations. In these many methods that the Buddha taught, what it really comes down to is taking responsibility for our mind and thereby watching our mind, being aware of our mind, being aware of what is leading, what situations lead to the arisal of attachment, lead to the arisal of anger, and ensure that we deal skillfully with those situations that we cannot avoid, and where we can, we do rather refrain from such situations. And as we gain more skill in taking control of our own mind, of keeping the afflictions subdued, then our mind will be ever more at peace, because it's our afflictions that disturb our minds. Hence, it's often translated not as afflictions, but disturbing emotions. These consciousnesses that afflict our mind or disturb our mind, these we need to recognize as what causes us harm, pain, and suffering, and thereby always being mindful of our inner work, our inner world of our mind. We act skillfully to ensure that our afflictions stay subdued. And the result is our mind is peaceful, undisturbed, unafflicted. And as we gain ever more skill, our mind stays ever more at peace. And with this peaceful mind, the great benefit is not just the happiness, the inner peace that we're experiencing, but we can become ever more skilled in developing further wholesome good qualities. For example, reflecting on emptiness becomes much easier. And with this calmer, more still mind, as we go about our daily activities, our understanding of emptiness too can be employed ever more. And our understanding of emptiness becomes useful in our daily life. That's all, Ken.
아니 착당 글로싱이 더 율도 다운디 아니 가서 다지 세지도 마주는 추교로지 그러면서 세개바이나 세개바이나라 베나 킬로미터 세개바이나 킬로미터 추고이나 추 세드 추여바이나 더베나 베나 가서다 텐상 다베 총jel은 저거라다 예가 마무 저거라다 다 콘수기 니네 아니 드론디기 티 아니 슈세로다 비기 니네 다베 총jel봐도 킬로미터 가주야 니니 딱딱지 딕마트나 비기도 사로 그러다 다베 총jel레 말아 드난신기 베나 롬바도 롬바기 아니 막지온디 콘수기 킬로미터 딱딱 세 개ችን 비기래야 마음이 유거라다 딱딱지 세 개면나 아니 딱딱 비들 육토고 말아왔어 디난신로지 아니 작당 글로이 따당디 가드는 세 주교레스 이제 디톤 내가 지온디 가드는 노르교차고레스 내가도 농주쇼도고레스 마도 잠지 글로이 톤에 따온디 먼저 참마 찍었다 두고도 하세요. 속삭 참을로야 찍었다 두고라다. 잠지 돈 따온디. 당연주 차다 무슨 그 샤온디 줄대반자 아니 누스 때온디 기 아니 미리기 예와 여대바당 지 포무기 예와 여대바당 지 잔니 파마송 통대야디 차당 그 돈이 대반자 디차그였어레스. 딱 차당 파빠니 잠지 그 돈이 지 때온디 산지 좀 된 대로 상황을 찍고 수수니 수수 로봇 찍고서지. 그 세딱다지 갭트고 앉아 디그런도 왔어.
We need, in this process of coming to know ourselves, coming to know our own mind, we need to come to recognize our own boundaries, our own boundaries, whereby certain engagements up to this point, we can engage in an unafflicted manner, but beyond that, our attachment will arise, or our anger will arise. So we need to know our limits, our boundaries. This in the material world, this is of great importance. For example, if one wants to land a rover on the moon, one needs to have one's measurements absolutely precise. If they are precise, it will go well. If they're not precise, it won't go well. So this we know from the recent news. Similarly, in warfare, if one wants to destroy one's target precisely, one needs to know the exact measurement, the exact limit in order to be able to destroy it. But with our own mind, we need to know our own boundaries, our own limits. This needs to be very clear for us. And we need to then, through knowing the grave danger that the afflictions always present, we need to keep within the confines of our limits, of our boundaries, to ensure that attachment doesn't arise, anger doesn't arise. So therefore, we need to be very clear that all unwanted situations, problems, difficulties, pain and misery all come from our afflictions. We need to see them as the grave enemy that we need to avert from allowing to arise. Right now, in another way to use this understanding of limits and boundaries, our feelings of closeness towards some and distance towards others, that expresses a boundary. These are boundaries that the Buddha taught we must abandon. Our feeling of closeness for some and therefore distance towards others leads to attachment arising for those that we are close to, and anger arising towards others. This is something to be abandoned. The Buddha taught that in the Buddha's context, love and compassion needs to be applied towards all equally. We need to have a sense of closeness, not towards some, but towards all equally. See everyone as a friend and intuitively relate to them as being a dear friend. This is indispensable for the generation of actual love and compassion. So here too, we need to come to this process of coming to know ourselves well, coming to know our mind, coming to know the limits and the boundaries we set. There are those that we need to hold to too strongly so as not to give rise to afflictions. And this then also includes terms of our loved ones. We recognize that the feeling of closeness towards some, that boundary needs to be expanded and develop eventually a feeling of closeness towards all. That's all.
아니 카로디 셴발라이 마샤와치 수수 니 삼로 단단지게 떠는다 노르요리 삼성 로 딘디시 샤토와나 강아디 용아요레스 로 아니 지 강아 체온디 람상 디 카로디 셴발라 파 샤와이나 마기버 망 용그레스 디 야제 야담 용그레스 다 아니 수수 샘기 게임 바디 아니 삼니 양지 까불까당 안서 삼당단 잠을해서 지금 심바기 해든지 소소소 다 용금도 삼네 심바기 해든지 딘디에 제 대체고 말했어 샘그 깡아디 샘그 농축디 세야요레스 이제 디 세야가 탑디 가리나 삼 디직 체고도 삼라 어두 삼당러나 아니 shumbaya maki kanga nyong o ta dindi ge tablam ta teng do asra tablam di yo ta jo o di teng do da di ngan zo ge ro ani tol jing ro to wana kanji susu mezi di kibucha ge res an kewa chima kheleng ji ba di ge kewa chima la ya pheng ge res.
If you take to heart the advice that's been given today, and you really look at your mind, come to know yourself well, both in meditation and keep that sustained as you go about your daily activities, coming to know yourself ever better, you will be not only knowing yourself well, but you'll understand how the mind of other people work too. So through understanding your own inner process, your own inner workings, you'll understand that this is how other people think too and why they do so. This means, or how you will experience this as a benefit. Let's say you meet someone and they give you a hard time, they really insult you and they're rude. Immediately, in dependence on this training, you'll recognize their mind is dominated by the afflictions. Their mind is dominated by disturbing emotions. This person has completely lost control of their own way of thinking, and therefore they are talking in this way. They are really just expressing their own afflictions. Recognizing this serves to, firstly, stop you from getting upset, because you realize what they are saying is merely an expression of their mind, and that their mind is deeply unhappy, deeply disturbed right now, is why they are saying the things they are and in the way they are. It's a reflection not on you, but on their mind at this moment. Recognizing that, you do not take their words to heart. You recognize those words are not about you. They're an expression of their own mind. This means your mind stays calm and undisturbed. And at the very least, you will not respond in a harsh manner that will just inflame the situation. And why? Because you're not upset by what they're saying. You're not taking it personally. You have understood, in dependence on your prior meditation, that these words and the way they're expressing it is only a reflection on their deeply unhappy state. So at the very least, you will not get upset and therefore will not respond in kind. But if one has been training further still and developing good qualities within oneself, those will arise now. Love and compassion for the suffering being will arise, because one will know that this is a person who longs for happiness, and yet they think they are responding in this way and they are suffering. And a deep yearning for them to be freed of this mistaken way of thinking will arise. And this is the mind of compassion. This is what will dominate you. So with both compassion and the wisdom that comes from understanding the situation, you will respond skillfully in a way that will ease their suffering. From doing so, from practicing and training in this way and interacting with the world in this way, it's very clear that your own mind is much happier. So you, right now in this life, are experiencing greater happiness and ever less problems and difficulties. Moreover, you are bringing benefit into the lives of others right now. And through this process, you are accumulating vast stores of virtue that will benefit you in future lives, and stronger habituation to minds of wisdom, minds of compassion, and so forth. And these two will benefit you greatly in future lives. That's all.
Kanga, Rada Kanga, Lu Kanga, and Sam Kanga, Madeba Kanda, Giovannia, could Gangela then choice. Ra Gangela then joins a could Gangi Tony and is say of it. Ra Sam Kanga and Lu Kanga and Did Chagores, Lardun the same Kanga di, and say of it is. In the D, any Mangchaji Suzuki Samlo Tanra Kanga Yontan Jora, Yontan de Samlia Wuchi Patan Drovana, any Kabkalera, Tong to Yach, Tong by a Lamsang, Tarangi Samlatan Tony, and Yamadenis only, Sam Kangati, Chick Pen the same Shumba Rojana, Zawin in Meva Chayatindi. Tindi Ungores ra. That's shown that the Kunit in the Yonyamandu some Tamban didn't number your Ra. On the main birthday, Num Luvana, may shoot chamber run. These were the Chagores. 자원인 갓두 마기바 차나야 디 마기바 차 깬자디 돌아야 대 칠로기 나야 카마자 수수 샘그 삼당당 지ton 딩메바디 아니 탁제니 디 돌아야 삼당와나 아니 소수일 약슈데레스라
All physical and mental problems, sufferings, and difficulties we experience come about in dependence on causes. This is a key point to be aware of, because in dependence on understanding this, one will then want to know what those causes are. Because if the cause can be eliminated, the result will never be experienced. That's the first key point. The second then is to look really where those causes are to be found. This then ties into what we spoke about earlier, that how we experience something is dependent on our mind. So therefore, if we want to live a life with no problems, if we want to live a life where we experience no suffering, and if we want to live a life where we experience no difficulties, we need to eradicate the cause. And those causes are to be found here, within our own mind. Recognizing this then, we take responsibility for our own mind in all situations. And by training one's mind in the way I've presented today, one can become skilled in dealing with any situation, whether it's a situation that arises in dependence on what someone says or does, or a particular external situation one finds oneself in, or just from one's own way of thinking. One can deal with that skillfully. And in this way, then, nothing will harm you. Your mind will stay at ease, at peace. Nothing will be able to harm you. An unskilled person responds to problems in a way that tends to make them worse. They either get small and dispirited, or they get angry and proud. And in either way, they can be likened to someone responding to fire by pouring oil on it. Here, by becoming skillful with your own mind, inner fire of the afflictions won't arise. And even when it starts, there are sparks arising, sparks of desire, sparks of anger. You'll be aware of this, and you'll know of the danger that may follow. And you'll immediately apply antidotes, keep your mind calm. And in this way, by focusing solely on your mind, not on what others are saying and doing, but taking responsibility for your own mind, you will experience lasting happiness. It can have a meaningful impact on the lives of others too. That's all.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone.
저거도 연락당은 되게 됐어.
If you have some questions, then please do ask.
Yeah.
Thank you very much.
더-
Final Amrin dedication. For my 2 types of merits vasa space that I have amassed from working with effort at this practice for a grand length of time, may I become the chief leading Buddha for all those whose minds' wisdom eye is blinded by ignorance. Even if I do not reach this state, may I be held in your loving compassion for all lives, Manjushri. May I find the best of complete graded paths of the teachings, and may I please all the Buddhas by my practice. Using skillful means drawn by the strong force of compassion, may I clear the darkness from the minds of all beings. With the points of the path as I have discerned them, may I uphold the Buddha's teachings for a very long time. With my heart going out with great compassion, in whatever direction the most precious teachings have not yet spread, or once spread have declined, may I reveal this treasure of happiness and aid. May the minds of those who wish for liberation be granted boundless peace, and the Buddha's deeds be nourished for a long time. by even this graded path to enlightenment completed, due to the wondrous virtuous conduct of the Buddhas and their sons. May all human and non-human beings who eliminate adversity and create conducive conditions for practicing the excellent paths never be parted in any of their lives from the purest path praised by the Buddhas. Whenever someone makes effort to act in accordance with the tenfold Mahayana virtues practices, may he always be assisted by the mighty ones, and may oceans of prosperity spread everywhere. Thank you.